en route?
I just messaged him.
Okay, perfect. So because we have a quorum, I am going to go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I will go ahead and entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye, sorry. Motion passes. We'll go ahead and move now into our action items, which starts with our audit presentation and acceptance. Dr. Russell?
Chair Taylor, trustees, before you, we have Mr. Dewey and Audra from
Nice to
our,
meet you, Audra.
yeah, nice, thank you for being here, to talk to us and present to us a little bit around our audit that was done this fall and share with us the findings.
Okay, perfect.
Well, I'm really trying to bring it up. He did give me warning and I failed to bring it in. I apologize. All right. So I'm going to go real quick. I have a couple of slides first that I'm going to have you guys watch. I'm going to walk through it with you guys on that. And then I'll let the auditor speak her, and then she can get out of here as well. So, all right. So this is I'll be pretty quick and easy. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. First off, majority of what I talk to you guys about is general fund. So there's a bunch of special revenue funds like our other than ESSER you'll see on here. I really not going to talk about Title I, Title II, some of those other ones, school nutrition. That is pretty much is what it is. But general funds, what we always talk to you guys about, that's what really manages our district. When you really look at where we are last year, we had actually $6.8 million of new money that came in last year. And a big one was this $63.59 per teacher. We were able to get over to the health insurance and several other one-time grants for mastery. But remember when I keep saying, hey, remember when we were a little low because our unit was less. So even though we got more money than last year, based on what we had with budget, we actually were about $1.4 million less. Oops, what happened? With budgeted. So we were actually a little low at budgeted, and we were able to make that up later on, and I'll explain that later. We did, for the first time in years, actually have a decent investment return. With millions that we have in the bank in the past, we were getting like 0.25% for a long time. And now we're actually getting decent payments in the bank. So
Yeah, it's gotten high.
so it's actually super nice right now. So we're getting that money had gone away for years, and that's just a big hit whenever the economy hits us. And we did have a big property tax decrease if you look in there, but a majority of it was the supplemental levy because remember we went down from the 12 million down to the 8. So this last year was the first year of the 8. This is the second year of the 8. And then we had last year we had the reduction in one-time funds. Governor put in money last year to pay the teachers. The year before, we actually got teachers and all staff for that same money from the COVID money. So remember, I came to you and we were in Skyview and asked to get the retainer of this admin and classified and everybody else to be paid out of ESSER funds. That's basically why this one was lower, because we got less money. When we talked about expensive highlights, we did have increases across the board. We had quite a bit of increases. I'm not going to read those. You guys can see there, but a big one. Just remind you guys, we did the classroom furniture last year. That was a huge thing. Courtney back there worked his magic, and it was like $1.2 million of classroom furniture that went out. That was a chore, to say the least, but that was well-needed things. We hadn't had any of that since our last bond in 2007. I tried to trickle 50,000, 60,000 in there at a time, and that just doesn't do anything for our schools. So this was actually legit, really big thing that you guys helped do. And the extra supply budgets were absolutely phenomenal for those people. There were some really great things that happened with those as well. What did hit us, a lot of it was the increased substitute costs. Last year, we still had issues getting subs in, so we had to give a bonus for those people coming in. We have taken that bonus away this year because we didn't have the money to keep doing it. We did raise our pay, which cost us a little bit in budget, but not near as much as the bonus we were trying to give to get people to actually come in and doing it. And then we got our support stocks. We got support cost increases. Our classified increases this year we got the biggest, but the year before the year that under audit, we tried to do some classified updates because this was trying to get our people up to the $12, $13 an hour that we were trying to do before. This was that part of that process. Health insurance was a big part of our increase. I mean, our average cost before was roughly around $8,000, and now last year was $12,500 per employee, regardless if they took it or not. But it's also been one of our best things for retention, and it's one of our best things to bring people in right now. And we had a lot of facilities money that we still on the books that were in our financials that now got spent last year as well. We had $3 million or so that was just coming through that stuff. So we had a lot. And our transportation, it was a lot over as well. And a big part of that is just the fuel crisis and that. So this year, what we did to curb that is Courtney went through and said, hey, we need a discount of this much to get ready. And then, so I think they cut some routes, and we're still looking at efficiencies. We still have a pretty high cost per student with ours. So we're still looking at that and how to get this a little bit more efficient to break some more of that cost down.
Randy, could we ask questions just in case there is questions coming up? Because you're going through a lot of information. I don't know if the trustees, I think you only got 4 slides or so. I think we're about halfway through. So
I'm speeding through this.
Trustees, do we have questions?
Who manages the investments?
Really, it's that one is just LGIP. So we just sent it the state LGIP, and whoever does that at SCO or whatever, the state controller's office deals with that treasury.
So it's a state fund.
It is. So it's a local general investment pool. So all districts, all state agencies actually put money into this fund. There's a lot of, it basically is very risk averse. So that's why in the past it was like 0.25. Now you can basically get a treasury stock that gets you 4 or 5%. So now that's why we're doing it. So it's very low risk, no risk to us at all. And that's where our money goes to sit. And then we pull it down just to make our bills. So it sits in this investment account. We pull down $7 or $8 million each month.
let's go back to that slide so we can.
Which one?
The first one that you had.
With the investments.
The very first slide you had.
Right there.
So that's $6.8 million from the prior year. That is not additional funds from traditional revenues. That's the $63.59 per teacher for career ladder, health insurance funding, all that. That's what is 6.8, right?
You're right, correct. So majority of our increases last year were from the teacher ladder and other areas. They actually this year that we're currently in is the first time we've actually got discretionary increase in a long time. That year, last year under audit, we didn't get any discretionary because the legislatures felt because of our ESSER funding, we didn't have any. So majority of everything there was career ladder. And then a big chunk of that, I mean, huge chunk was the health insurance increase because they gave a big chunk of money to basically entice all districts to get either better insurance themselves or go to the state plan. I mean, it cost us $650,000 just to get there to put in the reserve, let alone our actual cost of $12,500 each.
Wow.
So it was a big hit, and it was great. I mean, honestly and truly, I don't think we would change our mind whatsoever.
So Randy, would it be safe to say the district did receive more money last year, but much of that was really flow through that went to teacher salaries? The majority of that, the money that came.
100% right on that.
It was all dedicated.
It was all
One way or another, it was all dedicated to something.
Yeah, and the career ladder is a tough one because the lowest levels are mandated by the state, but then we have negotiation power over the top levels. And that's what we go through negotiations for. But a majority of all increases have gone through those lowest levels. We're trying to work through that process as well. Yep.
So and there's no more money in the pipeline, like the $1 million or the teacher stipends. That's dried up.
This year, we do not have any of those. That was COVID money that the governor was able to use. Most of that money is all up now. So we don't have anything this year that we're under that we have any of those capabilities.
It's time to flip the couch cushions.
Well, and most of these decisions were made by this board.
Yep.
So the state insurance, that's this board.
A lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Class coverage,
Yeah,
supply
yeah,
budget.
the classroom, all of that was us. So I think that it's good that you ask questions because these are newer decisions.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think obviously there's a tremendous amount of respect for you, Sujuli, and this administration. For me, I think I'm asking the questions that I wonder if anyone who's listening might be asking.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's
tell
why I
me
think
about
it's
this.
so good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually why I'm saying that I think we forget that we have new listeners. Sorry, I should have made that more clear. I think it's really good when questions are asked because I'm not thinking of those because we have, some back end knowledge. So I think it is really good. A lot of people I think are watching.
And the hardest thing is, it's hard enough to read financial statements anyway, if you're not an accountant, and let alone to read a government financial statement, which is a whole nother level of, it doesn't make sense in a lot of different ways. And so all I can say is majority of the time, if you just look at what budget to actual and we stay within budget in that range, that's basically my job to keep you guys informed that way. When we get to the actual financial statements, it all kind of works out in the end because that's how the budget works. But it is definitely one that when you have, 20,000 line items and all different funds and all different requirements of different things, it gets somebody, it gets a little hard to understand sometimes.
If folks do have questions though, Mr. Dewey, they can always come, call, email,
Yeah.
stop by.
Yes, I mean, everything we do is transparent. We have to have it. We do have information that goes to the state as well that they aggregate up there. But if there's ever a question on any type of things, yeah, definitely welcome anybody to come in and talk to me. So,
Well, and a lot of these bullet points have meetings where that was just the discussion as well. So there's a lot of information out there about them too.
yeah, and different what budgets
Yeah.
come through.
And then, I'm sorry,
Yep.
one last question. Salaries and classified increases. You said it's to take them to $12 to $13 or?
So the last few years we determined that our classified salaries were too low, and getting good qualified candidates in the positions that we needed was difficult. So an example, we were paying, I think, $9 an hour for parapros when you could go to McDonald's. That was always an example. You could go to McDonald's and make 15.
Which is a good job.
It is. Or you could go anywhere and make 12 at least, right? So we do believe that in order to work for us, we want people to have a living wage as well. And $12 is still not even a living wage.
Right.
So
And at $12, we were not getting applicants to apply.
Correct.
We were sitting with vacant positions open for weeks on months on end. We saw that change when we moved it up to the 12, 13, 14, 15 an hour and got more competitive with the job market.
one of the things we had to do is, so we had, so let's say our parapro, we had 13 scales, 0 to 13 years, right? So we determined that the first 4 years of those were literally so low that we couldn't even get a raise enough for those people. So we basically cut off the first 4 and then basically raised their top end more as well. So to give people abilities to get there. I mean, that was a big hit for us. But it did help to solidify those that were already here. And it did help us get some new applicants. I mean, a good example is my job that came open, my accounts payable job. I actually had 50 applicants or so for that job, which surprised me. And before it, I maybe get like 5. And even then, some of those weren't even good. So it has helped. It's put us in the mix. We're still not, and will never be as close to like regular business out there. But we're better than we were.
I think it actually made us much closer. I
Yeah.
would say that it made us comparative to many jobs that are
Some.
yeah, it did.
Yep.
And there was a huge demand in the marketplace in both private and public when we made that decision too. We saw the same thing happen post-COVID. And I mean, it was like overnight, it was almost like $5 an hour increases because COVID. Yeah. And there was,
You know what
yeah,
it worked.
literally. You're like, oh.
We had free money. All right. Any other questions on this? All right.
Great
So
question.
here's the big one to me, and this is what I always talk about. This is your couch cushion money. This is what we always talk about. Okay. If you look at our financials and you'll go through the paper is going to put a bunch of information out. We have millions and millions out there. But reality of the situation, our fund balance, our net unassigned fund balance is literally about 4.8. So it's the 5% that we need. Okay. But if you looked at last year versus this year, we did go down $4.75 million. But that was planned. I just want everybody to know it wasn't like it wasn't out there. The supplemental levy, we had a bunch of expenses that did get spent that we had been holding on. A lot of what happened in our supplemental levy, we had projects planned to do HVAC projects that we were able to move to the ESSER. And so we had the Nampa roof. We had a couple Shermans. We had 4 or 5 elementaries. And all those projects were slated to be on the supplemental levy. And so when we didn't do those projects, that money just sat in our account waiting to be spent. It wasn't that we didn't know how to spend it. We couldn't do all the projects at once. So this year, when all those projects got done, last year, we started spending it again. And a big one of that one is the Skyview cafeteria. So that there was a little bit of that one, and then there's some in this year too, but that was 1.6 total for that project alone to update our Skyview cafeteria. So, which has been a massive success. So those are the type of things that happen. So you have money that's sitting there from prior years, and then more and more spends and that kind of thing. We had some state PD money that got spent, and then we remember our carryover. The way it works here, the way I've always done it is, whenever you have money left over, revenues, I budget for revenues and expenses to match at the beginning of the year. If expenses come in lower, I call that carry forward. Okay. Sometimes it'll go to fund balance. Sometimes it'll go into an assign, which last year I brought to you guys and said, hey, you got $2 million here. How do you guys want to deal with this? And that's when we made the decisions to do what we did. Right. So, those type of things got spent. So we set it aside to spend it. So we had the one-time retention pay for the certified retention pay that we had in negotiations. We had leadership pay. We had some school furniture we knew about, the school supply money, and some other carry forward spend we had. So we did still have $300,000 in loss, which hurts me because I've only had one other year. We had an operational loss here, and that was the first year of COVID when the governor took 5% of our pay in June, right before year end. So this one hurts me a little bit, but when you think about $300,000 in relationship to how big we are, that's actually not that much. And it, again, mostly was, we had a huge hit in subs and a huge hit in budget, that busing that I just, we had other savings in other areas, but remember, we are also $1.4 million shy of revenue as well.
So when you give us that loss, and when you're saying that loss against what?
So it's literally expenses increase.
Right.
So they increase.
Yeah, I totally get what I mean. Like, but
Yeah.
like loss against, where did that 300K come from? Or it was just, you're looking at like,
Our fund balance went down, our savings account
so
went
you
down.
had a dip into savings into the general
Basically,
fund
yeah.
savings
Yeah, that's exactly
for
right.
300,000.
Yeah, and a lot of that was a little bit less because our units didn't come in as we prescribed. I mean, we had 1.4 to make up right from the start.
Mhm.
So I was with the increases in some of the other areas. There was just too much for me to be able to make up at the time. Normally, I have the ability to do it. That's why the year before we had 2 million. So when it all adds up like it did this year, it just made it a little tough.
I asked this a few months ago about that school supply, 500,000 that we authorized. And I was told that it hadn't been spent.
So we had 500,000. There was one that was set aside for another 500,000 if we needed it, and then the first 500,000. So the first 500 did go out to schools. The second one we ended up needing for some other things that were to just maintain our budget. Basically, was that 1.4 that we lost earlier. But the one school supply money, the 500,000, is separately set aside. There's some of that still hasn't 100% been spent, but we've got majority of it spent. And the schools are still spending today, and we told them that it needs to be spent by the end of this year.
And happy to give an update if you just like the general and
It's just, I would be interested to see kind of how the classrooms are utilizing that money, because that's really the intent, was for the classrooms and the teachers to use.
So Jeff,
over
are
and
you
above.
requesting, we want to break down of how the 500?
No. Well, and that's what I was wondering, if this hadn't been spent, which it has, this 500K you're talking about here
Mhm.
has been spent.
Yeah.
If this hasn't, what I was thinking is, if this 500K had not been spent, then could we use that to
Okay.
maybe cover some of that 300? But
Okay, so
Yeah,
nothing's
I
needed on a
did use
breakdown.
some
Okay,
of it already. Yeah. All right. And then the last one that I have here, the big, so this is how much we've spent this year in ESSER spending. So just put this in perspective of this is how much we spent this year and last year in ESSER spending, and we're spending about the same this year in ESSER spending. And that was, we had $50 million to be able to spend within 2.5 years, basically 3 years. So that's a lot of money. We did a lot of different projects that we could, but we did also have a lot of one-time salaries on there. And so these are the things, these are just kind of some of the big things that we spent last year. And are there any questions on some of those that I can answer?
this is it though, huh?
This year that we're currently in is what we have left. I'm
Say
glad.
lovey.
It's one of those.
That was hilarious.
Yeah.
That was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's one of those that it made it difficult with this much money because we didn't want to waste it, but it also made it so
Yeah.
things became hard once it went down.
Are
Like
you
Dr.
saying if we
Russell
give
said,
out
it
tons of
probably-
free
it
money
would have
into the
been
world,
best
it
not
makes
to
things
just
more
have it in the first
complicated?
place.
I'm wondering.
I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I mean, it was one that, I mean, it was one that it truly helped. I think the first one truly helped us through. The second one was a nice bridge. This third one probably wasn't at all needed. But we didn't want to just let $25 million go away. Some of it we really did need. I mean, it helped us a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
be able to
yeah.
do these big projects and to get some of these supports.
Substitute coverage.
I think so too.
Trustee Kirkman, if you remember when we first started, it was really hard for us to get substitutes. We weren't filling substitutes. We were having classes unfilled. That put a huge strain on the system. We were able to use ESSER dollars to raise that salary, which immediately fixed it. We were able to get subs after we did that. So some of those things really did help. All of those are supports that really benefit our students. But yes, the money is going away, and it is a mixed blessing. Again, at times probably would have been better not to have to deal with that because we're in the situation that we're in now. But again, as Randy said, really hard to allow money to sit in the bank and not use it when you see needs within your district. So it's
Well, and especially because we had a timeline to spend.
yes,
Yeah.
Let's keep
If
during
we
it.
would
Yeah.
we
had a
would have split
timeline
it
to
out.
spend.
If we had, say, 10 years,
Correct.
we would definitely have rationed this out a lot differently. And we did. We actually didn't do we split it out evenly as much as we could just so we didn't get all like this. But 50 million and is a lot to spend. And we tried as much as we could to do one-time expenditures.
Yeah.
we really
But
did.
the problem is, even with one-time expenditures, we couldn't even get half the stuff we needed. Like some of the bids didn't come in.
It was a perfect storm.
Yeah, I mean, it just flooded the market with different things, and we couldn't even get some of the HVAC equipment for a year and a half.
Yeah.
We had some schools that were just, that's great, you want to do it, but they're still, and so that also pushed down timelines as well.
Well, and again,
for
this
us.
wasn't limited to us problems. These were worldwide
Oh,
issues.
They
I
were.
just want to keep pointing that
It
out
wasn't
because
just us.
it wasn't just us.
Yep.
These were worldwide issues.
But I really do think the district did a really good job though managing that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mixed blessing, if you will.
Especially with, how many conflicting messages do you receive when you first get the funds and then there's more information and then less
Well,
information and more?
And trustees, just to remember, the last time there was stimulus money that came, that's how the district got into its financial mess. It didn't understand how to use those dollars. It double counted the dollars. It used them in years when we didn't have it accessible. So that all makes very nervous, again, having this extra money come in, knowing it's going away. So I would like to commend Randy and his team for keeping track of how much all those dollars and line item by line item, we would go through verbatim looking at where money's spent so that we don't make the mistakes that we did 12 years ago, 10 years ago.
The unfortunate part about ESSER spending is a lot of people still don't understand, even today. You'll still see it in some things that basically say, hey, they're asking us for all this money that we're asking for tomorrow. Why didn't they just use this? Why didn't they just use that money before? And there were so many strings attached with this that literally
Or people think we still have funds.
or
to
yeah.
it.
And it's a tough thing to show people how we could do it, and we did as much as we could. That's why, honestly, this last 2 years we only went down to $8 million in our supplemental. Remember that big chunk of that was our facilities money, because we purposely did go down because we had ESSER.
Yeah.
So we did go down.
Another
Really
clarifier.
quick, guys, Trustee Sue has something,
Yeah, go ahead.
a few points to go.
I was just asking for the folks who may be listening at home. One of the restrictions was time. You only had so many years to spend it.
Yep.
What were some of the other big restrictions that we had why couldn't we fix a building? Whatever the case may be. What were some of the strings to the money?
So initially there was even more restrictions that had to be COVID related. So it had to be like PP&E, it had to be stuff associated with that. And little by little, as more districts were like, what do you mean?
We can only
I
buy
can't
so
do
many
this?"
masks.
Yeah, and it's just, and we did. I mean, I think warehouse, I think we had enough sanitizer in our
You guys
warehouses.
actually bought sanitizer from me at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I mean, we had enough in 5-gallon barrels. They all went back.
Yeah, it was
I mean, it was just so much you could do. And then we eventually, then they were loosening the strings a little bit. That's why we were able to get the roof at Nampa in and that. But there was just so much we could do. And because it still had to be somewhat, I mean, on this last one, a big chunk of it, 20% of it had to have been to actually address learning loss. So you had to specifically show why this was doing that. And there was a list of different things you could do to do it. And that was a big chunk. At 25 million, you're talking 6 million of that had to be.
Trustee
shoved
Sue, what I
aside.
was gonna comment was the way the system worked too, it was a reimbursement system. So we'd spend the money and then we'd have to send it up to the state to get that approved. And there were numerous times where the state would send it back and say, no, it doesn't qualify. It's not fit in this category. And we have to say, oh, yes, it is. We have to send more documentation to it so they could see that it fit one of these categories. That's how restricted the dollars were. And we did that for 2.5 years. Continuing having things
Still
back
doing
out,
that.
and still trying to justify, yes, no, it fits this category. It's this number. It fits here. It's this purpose.
And the rules were being made as we were getting it.
Right. So I think the point of this question was, it wasn't like a Scrooge McDuck fund where we just threw money everywhere. There were very, very strict limitations.
Yeah. And it was budgetary support, but that was to help with low budgets and stuff like that. And so it was difficult to make sure we had everything in the right bucket so we could get it past the state as much as possible,
I think
and our auditors.
I think an important thing that there are very few one-time fun things here because HVAC, it's not one time, it's
No.
cyclical, right? So it has to be. I mean, that's why we are backlogged on our facilities and maintenance things. So that, when through this experience, we're 50 million short every year of what we could be doing. We could get rid of the supplemental. We could get rid of, right, all those other asks if we had that amount to work over and to not have line items, but can say, here's a need right here that is immediate in this building. And we, as professionals that know how to educate students and know how building facilities, people who know how to keep buildings safe for students to enter and to participate in things in, here's the impact that we could do, but that's how much we're short. I mean, that's the reality is, like, to me, that yes, the district has done a very good job. And even, I would even say the board in trying to make these hard decisions of like, where are we going to use this money that fits within these parameters? But these are all still ongoing things that are going to continue to come up. And we don't have ESSER funds for those. So hopefully those people that are listening are realizing that our levy ask is not really that much
And that was what the
compared,
bond
right? I
ask
mean,
was
same
for,
thing.
too.
Yeah.
And then I hope that they're listening and realize that we're getting an audit to say that this is what we did with the money.
Well, we have to. But,
Yeah, but that's what.
yeah, we have to by law. And the
We're
state
showing
came in
we're
and
good stewards of the fund.
did it as
Yeah.
well. So I got even more strict fund for the state
Yeah.
last year on that. So, yep. And so I don't have anything else on this. That's the end of my slides. But I was gonna let our auditor go next if you guys are ready for her.
And your name was Audra, correct? Audra, perfect. I'm Brooke.
Jason.
Andy.
And I'm Jeff.
Nice to meet you. We're glad to have you.
Glad you're glad to have me.
All right.
Keep that close to you.
Yeah, I've been busy.
And are we gonna do more presentations? and
No.
numbers?
No, I was just leaving this up. So
I was gonna stand. I was just
You can
gonna
stand.
Okay, I'm gonna stand, guys.
you can stand. I don't care.
Just for clarification, the audit that she'll be discussing was loaded in your guys' board
Yeah.
document.
So yeah, we can just jump right in then. So this is the audit for June 30, 2023. So little bit back there. We're going to be going over the financials. We did agreed upon procedure over the supplemental tax levy. And I also had a letter that was sent to you guys that is our formal letter called the governance letter that tells you how the audit went. So kind of go over some pieces in there.
Before you start, who sent,
I can bring it up.
Oh, that's a good idea.
before you start, who's seen this, your audit report, the final one?
We have no one's seen it
No, okay.
because we're not finalized yet. You guys are seeing the draft,
Yeah.
and then it's due to the state by the 10th.
Just
I'll let you pull it up
Well,
before I jump in.
maybe.
Maybe.
phone, ditto Outlook.
I blame Tyler.
Really, I never blame Taylor.
So the nice thing for me is I don't have to go over any financial
Might as well
information
just leave
since
it in,
Randy
send
did.
it in there.
Every still wiggling it.
I built it, yes. All right.
That way we
So,
can get all the things.
oops,
printed
okay,
out.
we're gonna
I thought he
do-
was
The
blaming
financials
you for all the
first.
successes in technology because we've seen a lot.
Tyler, if you're ever blamed for anything, no, it's never me.
Just go to the audit opinion.
What's that?
Just go to the audit opinion.
Boop,
All right. So this is why I'm here. This first page. This is our auditor's report, and it gives us it's telling you guys, I guess, our audit opinion over these financial statements. So those first two paragraphs, first thing right off the bat, says the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects in the second paragraph. And that is just fancy audit language telling you that this is a clean opinion that we're giving. So, and the technical term for that too is called an unmodified opinion. So the school district is getting an unmodified clean opinion this year. So the rest of this next couple pages is just information about what our responsibility as auditors are versus what management, what Randy does. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on that, just tell you that that's what it's about. The next section is the MD&A, Management's Discussion and Analysis. And so this is a narrative of the financial statements, kind of what Randy just went over with you guys. It's just a lot longer talking about what went on in the school district this year. So this is all written by Randy, his words, and we.
I had a template. Let's just say it's the same thing and then switch the numbers. Let's not get crazy here.
So if you like things in a narrative format, this is for you. The next section is just the basic financial statements. Voila. So this is where you're going to go to refer to what year-end balances were. And the next section is also the activity for the year.
So one thing I will say with government statements, so we work off what's called fund balance statements. We'll see those later on. But somebody in their bright mind, even before I started doing my accounting work, was a standard that basically says we need these to look more like regular business financials. So they came up with what we call the GASB 34 statements, a government-wide statement, where they take all these things that we've been doing in cash basis and make them into a full accrual statement. So those are the fund that what you're seeing here is the statement of net position. These are actually a full accrual that 90% or 80% of this is in our funds. But then there's these weird little ones. You'll see these like deferred inflows, employee pension obligations, and you'll see this big giant negative unrestricted. This is literally something that makes no difference because here's an example. We have a liability on our books for net pension liability for Percy. 64 million. Last year, that was actually an asset for 1.2 million. There's nothing I can do.
That's a pretty big swing.
It really is.
And it's just passed down from Percy every year.
Yeah, it's
They give
just
you the
our portion of their liability. And basically the way the standard looks at it, they look at it and say, well, if Percy was to go out of business, you guys would still be liable, which we don't agree with, but that's basically, we've already paid it, but we still have a weird thing out here. And this is what they try to do, and they make it so complicated, it's ridiculous. So just let you know the first ones.
And I will say they came out with a new standard this year, a new accounting standard that Randy and his team did adopt. And it talks about it in one paragraph later on in here. But it wasn't material to the school district. So you're really not going to see anything about that showing up in here. But if you went and looked at another school district, it would be huge for them. And that was related to software-based subscriptions. So just something to think about going forward. If you entered into a contract that was long-term and subscription-based, that's going to actually show up on the statement going forward.
Similar to this leases one right here.
Exactly.
See this lease liability here? This one I actually agree with somewhat because it actually is a liability out there. The other one I don't quite agree with. And the reason we don't have a lot of software, our biggest ones are year by year, just to let everybody know. So our biggest Microsoft does a year by year. Infinite Visions, our accounting software, year by year, and Power Schools year by year. So the only other ones out there, the biggest one this hits with is actually curriculum. I kind of got lucky this year that we're at the tail end of a lot of our curriculum. And now we just bought the $2 million one. That's going to be one that you'll start seeing because now there's a subscription. We already talked about the licensing things. Now has a subscription component that now I have to do this fun little adventure to say we have a right to use this subscription for the amount.
Yeah.
The difference is we won't have a liability. We'll actually have an asset because we prepaid it.
Oh.
If that makes sense.
Mhm.
So the difference with us is because our big softwares, we do that. We basically prepay to get a discount instead of having to have a commitment over time. So
Trustees, do we have questions so far?
Yeah, until the paper publishes that in the paper and we have that much extra money.
yeah. Well, that's why I'm
So
saying
then the
no.
questions come. How
Yeah.
come
So
you
if
have
anybody
all
wants to see, we're in the hole $18 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well, and most of that's kind of driven by the made up liabilities like
the
Percy.
made up-
yeah.
I know, it just seems so much.
OPEB
And
as
that's
well.
all driven by the made up.
This OPED number as well is one that basically because we got our staff stay on our insurance after they retire. So it's the craziest thing. And we paid into the state on that. So
They're real numbers, they're real estimates, but they can really fluctuate from year to year depending on how the market is performing.
and
So,
actuarial.
and yeah, actuary input. So the fund level statements, which is the next section and what Randy usually goes over with you guys, this is going to be way more useful to you guys. And it breaks it down by category. And so this is probably going to be easier for you to read and see what's going on and a lot more user friendly. So just wanted to point that out, and I'm glad Randy went over those differences with you. So, but yeah, I'm not really going to go into detail about any of this stuff since Randy did.
So the area here is this is what I was talking about our fund balance here. These are the areas what I talked about. All this over here, these fund balances over here are things that are totally restricted we can't do. What the paper likes to do is like to take this $39 million over here and say they are sitting on a bunch of money. As you guys can tell, really we're sitting on $4.8 million right here. That's really our couch cushion money.
And just to be clear, in the grand scheme of things, that's a very small number.
5%. Yeah. In general terms across the nation, most rating agencies would prefer us being anywhere between 10 to 15, if not 20%. And so in $100 million, that's $20 million. If we were to sit on that much money, we would have a lot of grief on our hands by a lot of different groups. So
$35 million of that is dedicated.
well,
It's just,
Yeah.
we can't do anything with it.
basically, yeah. Yep. Because all these restrictions, we have supplemental levy, we have
Yep.
all these different areas that we can't use it except for what we said we can use it for.
And I think the important thing is that fund balance is in our policy that we have, because it wasn't
Yeah.
before, that we had a set fund balance. So it is there for when things don't go as expected,
$300,000.
because if you're paying attention at all to the finances, right? I mean, we're setting a budget for what we think might happen, and not all those things are super easy to predict, right? I mean, especially when you think about COVID and all those things. So I think it's awesome. And Randy and his team have been doing a great job. As long as I think Randy's been working in the district, they've been doing a great job to keep our budget balanced and not have to dip into there. But when we do, that's what it's there for. And then part of that is that we're then going to put back in there, right? So it's not like we're dipping into it and leaving it alone. It's the very next year we're dedicating whatever we need to get that back to where it needs to be.
I think it's just smart business.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it just makes sense.
Well, the way that we're able to articulate the financial cliffs shows the financial acumen, or his fiscal understanding.
Mm-hmm.
So trustees, do we have any questions for our auditor, or like understanding just to go back, why we have an audit presentation. Do we want to ask some of
Oh,
those
no,
questions?
I
Does anybody have any
understand
questions
why.
for our auditor?
I do.
Yeah.
Did you find anything questionable that you had to bring back to?
Questionable, not like that. But I do have a section in here actually where we kind of report on our audit findings. And yeah, I would actually go back to the financials and go to the schedule of finding and question
The
costs.
questionable part is Randy. Just-
This is, I will admit, this one hurts me a little bit. I am full on.
Your ego.
It is. I have all of these years. I've not had an audit adjustment. I had 2 this year. It hurt me. It really did hurt me. Right here.
Yeah, so at the
Nope,
back
that's
of the
not the one.
report, there's 2 letters. One is about the financial statements. The other is about our audit over the federal awards. And the last 2 pages summarizes how our audits went. So the first part is about the financial statements. So if you scroll up just a teeny tiny bit.
Isn't it down? Isn't it down here?
Yeah, there you go. Perfect. So the financial statements section is first there, and you can see where I talked about we had that unmodified cleaned opinion. So that means the financial statements present fairly. Well, the next section, it talks about internal controls over financial reporting. And there are 2 levels of findings. And the highest level is material weakness, and then the lower level is significant deficiency. And we actually had a significant deficiency this year in financial statements. And that was due to an audit adjustment that came up that we found as auditors. Yes, 2 audit adjustments we had. And so the dollar amount was big enough that Randy had to book the adjustment. And so therefore we gave him a finding for it.
And
Yep.
how big
What
does
was
the
the
funding
bid?
have
So
to
let
be?
me
for
so
us
let
to
me
vote?
explain. Yeah, so let me explain how what went down on this one. So what happens in our world is, remember I was saying we go from a cash basis to a full accrual when we come to the financial statements. And so what happened is we had a bill that came in August that should have been accrued back into this financial statement for part of the actual the Skyview project. It was $400 and some thousand, $490,000. And it hit that part actually hit our 425, which is our lottery funds actually. And so that one came in, and unfortunately we marked it, need to be accrual, and we missed actually doing the journal entry. And another one is they actually found, and this was legit, they actually found we missed something on our tax roll this year, and so they actually helped us in this one with a tax receivable that we had undervalued.
How much?
That one was 200 in the general fund, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
sounds right.
So it actually
first one was
helped us on that
400?
one. So the first one's 400 in the other funds, and then the other one we had 200 grand that I reported our financials.
So had these not been that's not the word I should use.
Not fine.
It's not out to get you. It's out to make sure that everything is
Identified. Had these
Yeah.
not been identified?
But had these not been identified, is that something that could have led to maybe on a smaller schedule or smaller scale, what happened 10, 12 years ago, where maybe some of those?
No. So in this, go ahead. You want to?
Well, yeah, no, the question's a good question, Trustee Kirkman. I don't believe so, because essentially it's the paper trail is what we had to correct. The money was spent as it should have been, and the books would have balanced, but the paper trail didn't match.
That's what I was saying.
It's really the paper trail that was seen.
Yeah.
And that is that accurate?
Yeah, and so ultimately what happened is, in the lottery fund, say I would have shown that 1.3 would have carried over for next year's spend,
Right.
and then that 400,000 would have come out of that next year. Instead, it came back in this year. Now I'm bringing over it's 900,000 to spend.
So at the end of the
So
day,
it corrects
it's a
itself.
wash, and,
It
and
really
that's
is.
just coming
It's a
from a
timing
simplistic mind.
issue.
But it's just making sure that it's in the right, at the right time,
In a
at the right,
period.
that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well,
Okay, I
yeah.
totally. get it.
And when those things are found, you guys go and you look for the material proof to correct them, correct? And then they're reported. And then is that fairly comparable, or are those somewhat common mistakes that can be made?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
It's the first one I've had
Just
in 10
not
years.
Miranda.
It's just so frustrating. It's like, are you kidding? It was one of those.
No,
It,
totally get it.
it just fit that this year we'd have 2. I mean, it literally would. It's like, out of all years to have I'm glad they were both in the same year because it won't ever happen again.
Trustee Sue
So-
has another question.
So the second one was the tax liability?
No, tax revenue.
Oh,
So ultimately what happened is what I have to do is I have to recognize the receivable that's supposed to come. So we levy in September and it doesn't get paid until June, July. Well, some of those don't come in even in July all the way. So there's some out there still delinquent and other monies. So we had missed part of one of the things that the county had given us in that calculation. So we had actually understated how much revenue we were supposed to get. So all it would have done is we would have had more revenue come in the next year that would have counted towards next year instead of this year, the previous year. So it still comes in. It's just a matter of what we were understating revenue at that point. So,
okay. Thank you.
and that's
Trustees,
weird.
any other questions? Okay.
So that's the financial statement side of it, but we also do an audit over federal awards. So we audited ESSER, we audited SLFRF, which is the stipend money. And then we audited Title I, which is a program that's been around forever. So we didn't have any audit findings in that. And we're looking at controls in there as well as compliance. So are they doing what the federal government intended this program to be? So we didn't have any findings in any of those three programs this year.
That's great.
$32 million, guys, what we spent in federal funds last year. About 14 is what we normally spend. So
And usually, like in years when there was no COVID money, so no ESSER, SLFRF, we only audit one program a year, so maybe two. This year we had to do 3. Last year we did 6. So we
Yes, it hurt.
we were keeping them busy and proving that stuff out to us.
Fill the state.
And then how long have we done an audit presentation for our budget?
every year since I've been here.
Every year
Yeah.
since you've been here?
Yeah,
And then-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this
Yeah.
is just common practice. So we are always auditing our budget. We always have an auditor that.
Yeah, and
comes
it's
in.
required. So
Correct.
within 120 days, we have to have an audit done
Correct.
by state law. by
Right.
state code.
So every year.
Yep, we have to have it in. It's due by the 10th.
And there's also a federal requirement for the federal funds as well.
If you're over, what, $10 million, you have to have it. Is that what it is?
750,000.
750,000. So,
It doesn't take much.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the summary of our audit findings. So we did have a couple of things come up this year that had to be corrected. So that's the financial statement. So
and there's a bunch of stuff in there that you want to read. It's great riveting. There is a cool section in here, just so you know. Here soon, I'll continue to do it afterwards because it's stuff we're required to by the bond. And if you look in the financials, it's this other information. This actually gives some of the great demographic data you guys have asked in the past. I only give the last 5 years, but if you want more data, I literally have it hidden in these same columns from the years before. It just gives us what our taxes, how much we received, how much money we've got, different historical state appropriations for the state, some tax information as well, and some of our biggest taxpayers. And that one, I just want to remind people who get upset with the Amazon plant that it's literally bringing in $400 billion of value into our tax rolls. And its only other one that's close is this Matern. And if you look, they're in 2 spots because they have 2 different plants. So the county keeps them separated for some reason.
And they are,
That's
Go-Go
Go Squeeze. Yep. But other than that, Amazon makes up a large portion of our tax base. You want to talk about the IAP?
So Randy's going to pull up the agreed upon procedures over the supplemental tax levy. And this report is really short. If you read through it, it's basically like we spent the funds on this and we go in and we check that. And so for each of those objectives, we say whether there was an exception or not. And so if you read through this, all of the objectives were met. There was no findings as far as those objectives go. So this is clean as well.
So this is our supplemental levy. The first year we got here, one of the things we told people, because they were so upset with us, my years, they was, hey, we'll get an audit that says we spent this money correctly. So we were one of the only districts in the state that actually had line itemed our supplemental levy and kept that line item throughout the state. And every single year, the auditors look at it to say we are actually spending it based on that line item. Now they've made a law that says they have to do this, and not that it gets to get audited, but it is a law. But we've been doing it ever since because we thought it was the right thing to do.
It's good fiscal transparency.
Yeah.
Trustee Sue?
I'm sorry, this is kind of clerical. Some of it says Boise
Oh, do we got, this is a debt draft. Where does it say Boise?
at the bottom right there.
Oh, that's because.
Oh, that's
of-
them.
Yeah,
That's
so
this is
our
them.
office is in Boise,
Okay.
so that's.
And then the other document on the first page, it also says Boise.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so their office is based out of Boise. So these are their letters.
Okay.
Not and so this is their letter that says.
When
we
it's
did it.
final, it'll have an I. Bailey signature, and so you'll know it's from us.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why it says Boise.
Yeah, it's a report. Yeah.
But good looking out for that. We like to know when that kind of stuff shows up. So that is that report. So that one's clean as well. And then the final letter is what we call the governance letter. And this is our formal communication of what an audit is, how the audit went, and then we'll disclose other information in there about how the audit went. So we talk about that new accounting standard. We say that they adopted that. That's in here as well. And then also in here, we disclose about the audit adjustments that showed up. So we kind of already talked about that with the significant deficiency. But we also have something called a past journal entry. So this is, so these are journal entries that are technically should be made, but we're not requiring them to be made because the dollar amount doesn't rise to the level that it needs to be made.
Did you tell us what that was?
Yeah, so let me explain to you what this one is. And this one's a little bit more complicated, and I apologize for that.
No, really quick, the dollar amount. What dollar amount triggers your company?
They're not supposed to.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'm actually,
I see.
I'm
That's all
If
you
I
need
knew
to say.
that.
I think I've asked like 4 times.
that's
Fine.
the $1 million question.
Yeah, literally.
Hey,
I
totally
will
fine.
say-
Totally fine.
Each fund has
Has
its
its
own
own
amount.
Yeah,
So
based on-
general fund is going to be way larger than
Makes
what it
perfect
is
sense.
for
Yep.
the debt fund.
You look at a certain
Yeah.
amount because there's always going to be
And-
some type of loss. Yeah.
And
You-
what's
yeah.
what's happening here is our payroll has always gone from the 12th of the 13th of the month to the 12th of the month, right? For many years prior to me even being here, even for theirs, we always basically said from that 13th to the 12th, we never actually did an accrual to the end of the year because I knew we had last year, so it netted to the same amount, right? Well, this year, remember we switched our payroll to the end of the month. So now I have money that all of June, I got all that in correctly now, but I also have 2 weeks of last year that are in this fiscal year as well. So it actually created that issue. And that's one of the reasons that money is one of the reasons we got a little bit of an overage as well, because because basically what this is saying is, well, we're kind of misstated from the prior year because we didn't have we didn't knock those 2 weeks, two weeks out of payroll that were in there. So we have 12 months and 2 weeks as opposed to just 12 months.
What is FY?
Fiscal year.
Fiscal year. Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted
So
to
we
make sure.
were, so the reality is we were always 12 months before when we stayed on the same schedule. The moment in time I dropped off and went to the 30th, that's what created that problem. And it hit our funds in a couple different areas.
I'm gonna change that so it's actually written out. So,
And the government-wide members that the stupid one you don't need to worry about. It's really just this one right here, the general fund, because these two, yeah.
so it hit different funds, but the only ones that it was significant to were the general fund and the food service fund. So we have to report that to you guys, make you aware of it, but it doesn't warrant actually booking.
Did you say
So.
significated to?
Significant.
Oh,
to-
significant to.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry, I was just trying to say. I was like, I did too. I was like, I don't even know that word. Like, I was like, that's why you're losing me. Help me.
Accounts make up
Help
stuff
me.
all the
Yeah,
time.
help me.
That's
Help
what
me
we
help
do.
Myself.
Yeah.
It's like mathematicians, they do the same thing.
Significant too. Thank goodness.
So the only other part of this letter that I wanted to talk about was there's a section about if there was any disagreements with management. So if there was something that we said was needed to be changed or whatever, and Randy refused, we would report that in this letter as well. So otherwise
They're very persuasive.
so
I would
that
love to see you discuss a Randy
Can you go-
removal.
Just keep going.
Yeah, this-
As you were sliding through all this,
Yeah.
there was something that grabbed my attention.
What's this?
He wants you
Just
to
keep going. As you were
Kind
sliding
of
through
slow.
this, there was
Oh,
something
sorry.
that grabbed my attention. So all the bullet points of some. Just keep going.
Right here.
No. Yeah, maybe this is it, the significant risks identified.
Okay, yeah. So,
Anything in there we need to, significant risks identified is a phrase that catches my attention.
I don't blame you. So a part of audit standards is that we do a risk-based audit approach. So what we do is before we start the audit, we go, okay, if anything is going to be misstated or there might be issues, where is that going to be? So we identify those areas and put extra focus on them. So these are those areas that there could be potential or more likely to have potential issues with. So
Based on industry norm.
exactly. So if you went to another school district that we audited, we're going to say the exact same
Got it.
areas essentially. So, and we do that across the board for any kind of audits, whether
Like it's
a
your
not,
standard of practice.
yeah,
Standard
not for
case.
profit, we do it.
So you didn't
First one to
identify
do.
any of those in this audit
Yeah.
for this?
So we
for
didn't
this-
have any related findings to those areas, but we put extra emphasis on
Sure.
auditing those areas.
Great.
Any more to your presentation?
That is all I have, unless you guys have other questions about auditing.
Trustees, do we have any more
No.
questions for our auditor?
No, last year we were perfect, and this year we had 2 occurrences,
I
so
know.
I don't know what to think.
80%.
Well, last year we were perfect because of Randy. This year we're
Perfect.
-2 because of Randy.
10 years. I got a 10-year track record. Come on. If it happens again, then we can start questioning.
You need to learn it.
And if you want to spy on the other school districts.
Yeah, come on. Yeah, let's get relative here.
All right, trustees, do we have any other questions for Randy?
No, except, well done.
Yeah, appreciate
I
it,
mean,
guys.
you really do a good
I
job.
appreciate it. We try hard. I mean, Diane's here. She pretty much does everything, so
Oh.
she's amazing.
Oh.
So
Well, accolades.
yes,
That's-
yes. Yeah, she worked so hard she even broke her arm for this. So yeah, no, she does a fantastic job. I couldn't have done it without her. My team is fantastic, and it really just shows how good they are at everything they do. So
And just so we're clear, to the taxpayer, this is all public information.
yeah, by law,
Every dollar.
every dollar we spend, I
And that's what I was
never
trying
worried
to
whatsoever.
get to with the audit, that it's done every year. The supplemental one we do, now it's law, but every year since Mandy can remember. Because I didn't see all the other ones. We
And
did
this-
tests everywhere year we've been here.
Well, in this audit, this report, once it's approved and goes, it'll be out there for the public to see. also.
Correct.
Yeah, it'll
And
be on our
it's published
website.
in the paper.
Yep, it'll be on the website as well.
Yep.
So
So I encourage you, if you're listening, go to this audit report once it's published and
Yeah.
read it.
yes,
And then-
Not before you go to bed because you'll fall asleep too quick, but read it
Literally.
nonetheless.
Read it, yeah, in small doses.
It's small.
So you can take the full thing in. All right, trustees. If that's the case, then I will go ahead and entertain a motion to accept our budget audit.
I move to accept the budget audit as is.
Second. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a vote of 5 yeses. And I love every time we have 5 yeses.
everybody turned around.
Okay,
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
thank
guys.
you.
Drive careful back to Boise.
And
Thank
Audra,
you.
thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It was really great to meet you.
We're done.
And thank you for joining us. this evening.
You have to stay twice.
Mr. Abu, you coming up? All right, you guys, we are gonna move right into our next item, which is an information item. We have Mr. Lebu, but I will go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Russell so he can give you guys a little preview.
So trustees, today at night, we would like to discuss a high school schedule change and want the board to be informed and talk through what that might look like for us. This is one of the mitigation strategies that we presented last week. It is somewhat under a time constraint. If we were to make this change, the sooner that we can make it, the better it would be for our district because we have to start scheduling classes. We typically start that December, January-ish. And yeah, January, February. So if we are going to make a change to our high school schedule, our schedulers need to know what schedule that's going to be. And if we delay this into February or March, it's then extremely difficult for us to get a schedule in time for our students to be able to select classes. And as you know, last year we did one of the approval process for our parents to be able to approve their classes. And we still want to continue that. That's not going away. But wanted to talk through what that is. It also has many impacts. A high school schedule can impact the length of day. It will be a discussion that we may have to talk about on graduation requirements. What does that look like? So the sooner that we could start really exploring that and then coming to the board with this is what a schedule change will mean and specifically be able to tackle those things, the better. So I'm going to turn over to Mr. LeBou. He's going to share some information with us.
Trustees, any idea how long we've been on our current schedule?
Too long.
34 years
Since 2008.
since my kids have been in high school.
Is it close to
2000.
Oh, 2000. Dang it.
was
I felt like I
smart.
asked this. I said 2008.
Yeah, it's been.
I think Mandy was closest.
Too long.
Has it really been since 2000?
Yeah,
That would have been my graduation year.
yeah,
And I don't even remember that.
yeah.
Huh.
So anything that's been in place that long is going to be potentially very difficult to change. What I really wanted to kind of speak to and help you to understand, perhaps, and maybe if you have questions, I could clarify those things. But the rationale or the belief in there being savings in the schedule has to do with the amount of time that teachers are in front of students. So in our current schedule, roughly 3/4 of their day is spent in front of students. That essentially it's an 82-minute period that they're not in front of students with our current schedule. That's very nice for our
Daily?
teachers. Mhm. It provides a great opportunity for our teachers to have some preparation time, to prepare things, to get ready to go. However, it does not align well with the amount of preparation time that our elementary and middle school teachers receive. So from that perspective, it's always been something that's been a little bit difficult to juggle. But
Is it contentious? Like, does it feel different from, say, secondary to primary? Does that feel different? Because I would think in secondary, you're seeing high school kids come through, so maybe there's a different amount of planning. You're saying, no, yeah?
Yes.
Am I
yes,
missing the mark? I'm
yes.
actually just asking.
No, you're not. I mean, one of the things that we try and consider is how much time or how many students a teacher sees. So a secondary teacher is more likely to see more
Got it.
students. However, typically only in maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 classes, depending upon what the teacher teaches. So
Okay.
it looks different. It feels different. It has been a concern with my elementary background as an elementary principal and as an elementary teacher. It contentious, I don't know, noticed, something that others are aware of. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So what happens, so there's a couple of things with our schedule that are challenging and conversations around a schedule change have been going on for, I don't know, I think since
22 years.
Since 2001. It happened in 2000, we hated it, come 2001, and now it's 2023.
yeah.
Okay.
So anyways, the need the benefit, part of the benefit of the schedule, and I think this is really important to understand, is that it provided longer blocks of time for student learning, which can be very advantageous, particularly for our career and technical education courses. If you're doing auto or something like that big chunk of time works really nice.
Music, band.
Yes, absolutely. All of those are huge. Where it maybe falls a little bit short is for some for some teachers, it's almost too long of a block of time. So what instruction could look like in some classes is some direct instruction. They teach the lesson and then they allow the students time to work, to complete their homework, which is not a bad thing. It's just a different thing. But by its very nature, doing the A-day, B-day block, you're going to see your students every other day, not every day. And also in our current schedule, they're getting 8 periods, so 8 different courses of study, which actually it ends up being a little bit potentially much. And I'm going to give you a scenario here to help you see why that might be. So 8 classes a semester would be 16 a year. 16 a year times 4 years, you can do the math, it's 64. You guys all know what our graduation requirements are. It's 51. That works out really good for religious release time for those kids. They can get their religious release time during the day. For kids that don't have religious release and for kids who are really studious and work through their courses, what that translates to typically is open periods.
Yeah, all of my kids have had.
And sometimes multiple open periods for our seniors, but great opportunities for intervention.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once again, there are huge advantages and challenges. One of the things too, and this was part of our conversation about the bond, right? And the benefit potentially of the last bond was a common CTE center. Because of our access, we're traveling kids currently every period of the day.
Yeah.
So with those 90-minute periods, it works out all right. It's expensive to travel kids like that. And so if we look at a schedule change, that's something that could be impacted as well. And so you can kind of follow me with this one just a little bit. What we've experimented with, or what they experimented with prior to my time, was something called bundling, which in a different schedule, if I'm a Nampa High student, but I'm taking a Health Ox course over at Skyview, instead of just going over for one course, I may have to go over for 2 courses or maybe 3 courses. Like it's a half day depending upon what the schedule might be. So that's one kind of thing to navigate. Do you have a question?
I do. I just have a question around CT. Very naive, honestly, but is it such a place where we could do, like, you could have 2 back-to-back periods so you were able to stay at CT and just do them for half a year, and then you complete that course so that those are your back-to-back classes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. So those would be things that we would.
Because my main concern, if we do make this change, was around CTE. So I'm really glad that you said all this. And you're presenting so well, I can't even tell which one is the good answer.
No, that's good. And is there also, to piggyback on that, Chairman Taylor, or Chair Taylor, is it possible to do a hybrid and have the CTE classes even stay 82 minutes and all the others move, or is that just going to wipe?
I think it depends on what
Where they lay out.
direction we choose to go. So
Do you put them all later in the day or something? I don't know.
yeah, so the models that we've looked at, or other models, do things like they block first and second together, and then third and fourth together, and then
Got it.
So it's basically both of what she was saying in that longer period and block.
And it requires us really working well together. And let's see, for someone who's like a huge fan of, say, Nampa High.
Oh.
I don't know who that would be.
Right, me?
Looking this direction.
Oh, I mean,
Nampa High.
all the way down.
He's looking away.
Yeah, he's looking through me to Waylon and then right back to me.
Yeah. So I mean, if your program is at Nampa High, that's fantastic. But if the program you're interested in is on another campus, it might be like, well, I don't, it becomes a little bit more of a lift to want to do that. So it's something we're really aware of, and we're considering. So one other thing that I wanted to share, because we're kind of we're considering all alternatives, and really we're here to ask for your permission to kind of move forward and exploring options, but we've kind of considered some things. One thing that happened during the financial crisis, we ask our teachers currently to teach 6 of 8. So they teach 3 on A day, 3 on B day. One of the things we did through the financial crisis was they taught 7 of 8. So they had their they had a prep period that was really long one day, and then essentially didn't have a prep period the next day. That was not particularly well received by
Can
staff.
imagine why.
But any of the schedule changes that we're considering actually will probably most likely lengthen our day a little bit. We'll have to lengthen our day just a little bit to make them work. And that would be like a straight 7 or a straight 7 with a zero hour. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about the math behind the straight 7 and why that's a consideration.
When you say straight 7 periods or straight 7 hours?
Yeah, no,
it's
seven
a period.
classes, 7 classes, and potentially with a 0 hour added into it. But the straight 7, they would teach 6 to 7, and our models predict that would save us somewhere between 20 and 25 FTE to do that. The way that works out, though, number-wise, is 7 a semester is 14 for the year, times 4 is 56. So 56 is pretty close to a current 51. Now,
Yeah, graduation.
so
requirement.
here's some math though behind this. With the 0 hour, religious release could occur during that time. Or we could consider also adjusting the grad requirements in terms of credits. If it were 48 with 56, that would allow a release period every single day and would get us closer to, because like I said, currently we're 51 and 64, that's 13.
So are we looking for some wiggle room there? I mean, the tighter we get to 50, the less wiggle room anybody has
Correct.
to really get to that.
Right.
And going to 48, would we need to an exception from the state board? Or
No,
is that just
so-
something we
so
can do
this-
on our own?
That's a great,
Board policy.
yeah, that's a great question. So you guys could change that. The state requirement is actually 46.
Okay.
So there's
So we'll still
actually,
be 2 above state.
But having that wiggle room is a good thing to have, is what I'm
well,
thinking.
I think trustees, it really depends. It depends on the student. So for some students who take advanced courses, absolutely. For other students who, for maybe work, that's great.
Yeah.
I don't think it's great for seniors when you have 2 or 3 open periods and you're in school for an hour and a half or 2 hours a day. I don't know how that's preparing you for college or the workplace. So to me, there's some of those things where a high school schedule change might help our kids, better prepared as they go into year 13 of their life.
So it looks like we're trying to find a sweet spot there then.
Correct.
Between the 46, which is required by the state, and the
56.
58.
Every sweet spot
51.
has
Just
so many
1.
other, this is why high school schedules haven't really changed in 20 years, because they have so many different effects.
Yeah.
Length of day, perhaps start time, traveling with CTE, and we need to have longer blocks in our CTE courses. That's something that we have to have. I would say other districts do it though. There's CTE courses all through the state on very different schedules. So there's no one schedule is going to determine CTE or not, but we got to consider that. We got to consider band and music because it takes more time to practice those performances. And if you have a 48 to 58 minute block for time, that's hard to do that in some of those. So things that we just need to work out and consider. And I think what we're trying to let you know is these are things we're gonna have to address and we'll have to bring forward to you, and that it will have a big impact.
It even, I mean, so there are other things that we've talked about too, like for our high school kids, a little later start time really would be advantageous. There's a lot of
Would be
reasons.
smart. Late
start.
Now, but once again, there's a variable that we have to
Yeah.
navigate with elementary start time and how we dance as we share those
Yeah,
buses.
well, you got the buses,
you got the bus
transportation, and
situation.
everything else.
So
When are we gonna stop letting busing rule? what we do?
I know, because I think the late start, I think it's actually, there's so much science behind the late start time. But trustees, just because our hope here was to really chunk part of that state of the schools presentation up because we realized that they're big topics and that there's a lot of, questions, concerns, just general conversation around these. Really, our administration is asking for the ability to move forward and come back and maybe present us stuff and understand what our questions would be now. So today, our hope would be is if this is something that we would like for them to explore, we need to say, yes, please explore, and then give them what we think we would need to see. So just so we all know that
Yeah,
we're doing.
well,
And trustee Sue really quick has had his hand.
oh, I'm sorry. You gotta speak. You gotta speak.
Oh, come on.
But go ahead, trustee Sue. And then Jessa.
No, I'm sorry. Go.
What do the teachers think?
So that is a really good question. It depends on which teachers.
That's a really good answer.
She's like, now I'm gonna put on my secondary hat.
If you talk to high school teachers, I mean, in being very transparent, that they're a schedule change away from this could potentially result in some staff members saying like, I can find a job somewhere else. I mean, we have considered it at that level. Today during this afternoon during our principals meeting, we had a really kind of robust conversation about all the things that you guys are considering and how this impacts our community, because it's bigger than just the teachers or the kids. It's really our community. We're thinking about childcare. I mean, it touches absolutely everything. But I thought one of the comments from one of our high school principals was really telling. And really what he asked for, he was just like, I hadn't considered just how impactful this might be. And he said, I think there's value in this message coming from me and giving me an opportunity to talk to the teachers about what's happening and quite frankly, the why behind it. This is not us trying to do anything but remain fiscally responsible and viable, and in the process, maybe doing some things that are advantageous for student learning and the success of our programs, potentially graduation rate. All these things are, I mean, they're just intimately interwoven, and so there's lots of pieces.
And you may not know what one piece is until that one piece falls out of the way, and then you see it. So
Yeah, but I love these conversations, and I love that this is how you answered that, because that is who we would want. That is who I would want to hear from, because there is going to be it's a community impact. I would agree. And I think that this is a fiscal choice. And the fact that we're having that conversation just puts me at ease somehow, because I don't think that we just woke up yesterday and we were like, we would love to change high school schedules. I think we're really taking a look at what we can do to remain fiscally responsible. And I love how you followed it up with student achievement. I really just loved everything you said right there. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can say something, the impact that it has overall across the spectrum, that's what I want to see. So I want you to, when you come with whatever report, how it's going to impact kids, how it's going to impact the parents, how it's going to impact transportation, how it's going to impact our budget, how it's going to impact our teachers, right? Just give us a little bit on all sides, right? Because then that helps us understand and know what the message to send out is.
So I would pose this question. So that actually the fiscally the most advantageous move is actually asking teachers to teach 7 of 8. It's 30 of 29 FTE. Doing a change perhaps in another way is probably going to be somewhere between 20, 23. So I don't.
And it does 7 of 8 require a schedule change still? No.
Well, there's a couple of pieces to this that would have to be considered. The trick with 7 of 8 is that it kind of puts us in violation of the master contract in terms of the preparation.
I think that's why Mandy was raising her hand.
Oh, I have a more fiscally responsible and
I'm so
efficient way to go.
I didn't.
That's all right. You were looking.
I'm so sorry.
Violently raising my hand.
Just violently shaking.
Yeah, I've done 7 of 8. I've done 8 of 8, and then it's crap. Just telling you, like you need a break, especially when you're dealing with this many kids and child behavior. You need time to reset, regroup, get things ready for the next class. Like you do need that. That time is needed.
Can you walk me through 7 of 8? I don't know why I'm missing it. So what does that
7
do?
of 8 would be like, so on A days, let's say I teach 3 of the 4 classes, but on B days, I teach all 4. So one to every other day, I have a 82, 92, whatever the minutes are break. So 7 of 8 means you're only getting that break every other day. Which when you look at, like in comparison, just over the calendar, you probably could balance it out that you have enough 90-minute breaks or whatever it is that you're actually averaging 45 minutes a day, which I think it fits fine in the master contract.
Okay.
I'm just saying it didn't go over well, and it's not because like initially it didn't go over well. It was throughout the entire process, people were tired.
So let me understand then a regular day, the proposal is that we would teach 6 every day
7.
of 7 instead
So teachers would teach 6 classes of 7
each
is
day,
what the straight 7.
There's no A and no B day.
No 8.
but no A and B day.
It's
So
the
then it's a
same thing
6
every
of
day.
set. Okay.
You see
So
your-
same thing every day or
you
yes.
see your
please,
kids every
yes.
day, and there's benefits to that too.
Okay.
So we could, go ahead, Mandy.
So currently 6 of 8 are teachers. One teacher teaches 12 classes a year. The straight 7, well, it would be 12 classes a year still because the teachers would get a prep every day. So they would teach 6 of the 7. So it'd be the same. You're still teaching 12 classes, but just differently, right? If we go to a trimester system, and I know people are like, nowhere else in the area is doing it. Well, guess what? District 91 in Idaho Falls has been doing it since well before 1996, which is when I graduated. It does work. There are other benefits with the RTI and interventions and things that can be done on it. And it could be a 6-period day. So every class period is 60 minutes long. We do not have to get a waiver from the state. We do not have to add time to the day. And each teacher, because you'd have 3 trimesters, first, second, and third try, would teach a total of 15 classes a year. Winner, chicken, winner.
I know. I felt like you were going to follow it up with your mic drop. I felt like you were gonna, I was even taking notes.
The intervention piece, I'm sorry, this is just coming from a math perspective. I think we do a disservice all the time with math because kids don't pass first semester. And then because we have nowhere else for them to go, they go into second semester. And it's like, hello, could we set you up more to fail any other way? Right?
So you're saying the
But trimester
would
system, most that have done it, I don't remember IF system, but Rigby does it. And like they take 2 tries of math a year, that gets them their 2 credits of math. So if you didn't pass first trimester of math in first trimester, well, then you could take first trimester again, second semester, then you could take the second semester in third trimester, and you wouldn't have to necessarily do summer school or sit in a class for a year and fail for a year and have to do summer school or have to repeat the year.
So Mandy, those are 60-minute classes, correct?
I believe so.
So how would that work with CTE? When you're walking into band and it takes you 20 minutes for the kids to get their instruments out
Well,
and sit down and all of a
so
sudden class
at
over, or
6 times 3, that's 18 credits possibly a year, right?
So it's 72.
Times 4 is 72
so they'd
opportunity.
be same CTE class each for 3 semesters.
Or it could be that they are
Depending on
double
the
blocked,
class.
right? So
Yeah,
that it's
okay.
2
So that's
hours
still
in
an
the
option, yeah.
CTE. Like you could do a modified block stuff where CTE, they're there for that class 2 periods in a row. But that's 72 credit hours. That is well above our 51. Sorry. I
noticed
mean,
that-
I know
I
there-
noticed that Wayland just moved up.
I know.
I was gonna say, I
I know.
believe it. I believe that.
Right out of the corner of my eye.
That we would like to join the conversation. There was a shift piece on the board move, and I think that his presence here means he would like to speak.
Trustee Taylor, trustees, thank you. Having taught with Mandy on that schedule, having worked in a trimester system at an alternative high school, having been a principal at a high school with the block schedule, all of these options are what we're actually asking for tonight. We could get lost in the details of all these things, but what we're really asking is, can we develop those plans, bring those to you, and have you see that perspective while we gather input from all of those other entities? I do agree with Mandy. I've had conversations with Mr. LeBou. The 7 of 8 is a very, very hard sell from having taught in it and looking at the toll that will take on our labor force. But Mr. LeBou is not wrong from a just fiscally tidied up perspective. That is the easy answer. It really is. I'm fearful of what that would cause for our labor force and how that would cause our secondary folks to feel.
You're so right, because when we're talking about the quality of education, you know, when you get to 6 period and 7 periods of the day, that quality of education is.
Yes. There are multiple other options again, and I think that's the point that we want to get back to. Is
Well,
if you could give us your blessing to look through and research those options, we'd be more than happy to do it.
you have,
And we
you
have
mine.
thought. So.
You
You have
mine.
mine as well. I think trustees, if there's, go ahead.
No,
Sorry,
so
Dr.
Chair Taylor and trustees, right? I think just to, if that's okay, what we would do then is start forming a group to work on this, take input from the folks it's going to impact, and then come back in December with some information to the board about where we currently are. The hope would be we would actually have a solid plan in January to tell the board, here's exactly where we're going to go, and here's what we're going to need to do when it comes to graduation or start times or get length of day or those type of things. We may have that in December. I'm not sure. I just don't know where it's going. As you can see, when you start these conversations, it can go on for hours because you can talk through all the different possibilities and things like that. But
So just clarification, the board is not making a decision tonight?
No, not at all.
We're
Yep,
just giving
that's
them
what I was just
our
doing. Yep, and we're
Right.
just giving
And
our
not putting
blessing
it
to
back
To move
explore.
forward.
Correct. Yep, and that's why,
Move forward with options to bring back to the board for a decision.
and that's why I was going through and asking what we would really like to see, and then Marco said that
Well-
impact picture. Go ahead, Mindy.
I just want to add on, just because I feel like this is my chance to talk to Steve and say,
Okay.
here's my add-on. Maybe even thinking about a 0 hour or an extra hour at the end of the day, whether it's 8 period day or a 7 period day or a 6 period day, doing one more so that kids could start later in the day, could start earlier, depending on the kids, the family, and the need. And again, bringing that just in. I
So,
know
I got a
you know
question
that
for you.
stuff.
If all these changes are made, will you come and work for this district?
It's getting closer and closer.
So you asked,
Sorry.
Chair Taylor, you asked
Trustee
the
Kirk.
question, what do you want us to have to, I think that's gonna, that question
Right.
right there is gonna be a lot bigger conversation.
Well, but I think
So
what
just
we're,
leave-
we're hearing really quick is we are hearing, like, of course, there's gonna be emphasis and we're gonna have questions around CT.
But I think we just let the staff
Is
just
that what we
throw
wanna
all
do?
the mud against the wall and just.
So do we want to see their top 3 options instead of just a ton of spaghetti, but their top 3?
I have a caveat.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I think for the sake of the teachers, for their mental health, I would not want to see a 7 and 8 day. I think you're going to burn people out very quickly, and then we're going to lose very good people to other districts. So that for me personally is off the table. I don't think it's a good idea. And we
I would agree.
Trustee Sue, can I make one suggestion? While I completely agree, I think the levy tomorrow and other mitigation things as we continue down this road,
Correct.
we keep having that conversation. I completely agree. And that would be a last resort that I would want to put our high school folks into. I think that as we kind of travel the next few months of uncertainty, we really need to keep that at the forefront. We want to protect our people, and knowing what options are available to us as other dominoes line up or fall, I think is a really important piece. And I know that we have models of options, again, as Mr. LeBou referenced. We've talked about this for a few years. Now it's down to getting more specific input, working with groups of people so that they understand the rubber is starting to meet the road. And I know we can bring back 3 or more options depending on what the board's appetite for that
I
is.
feel like just your top
I-
3.
3, I would say 3 to 5. If you have more than 3 options, I want to see all. I want to, all the viable options that you think, I would like to see them.
That's crazy.
I mean, if we're talking going to 6 to 7, we'll save 20 FTE. But going to 7 to 8, we'll save 26,
29.
29.
It sucks that money has to.
Yeah.
All right.
Investor would save more.
So it's a consensus because I hate choice paralysis. I really do. But I'm good if we can stop at like that 3 to 5. But I think what we are saying is Mandy really loves trimester. Marco wants to see impact by subcategory. Jeff wants to see everything you have.
No.
I feel good about your top 3
Let me-
choices,
let me-
and trustees Sue wants
Let me
teachers to know.
rephrase
She
Chair
doesn't.
Taylor's comment.
Oh, good.
I want to
check-
see your most viable options.
Okay.
If that's 3, great. If it's 5, hey, I think we owe the patrons of this community every option on the table, every viable option on the table.
Yep.
And I do agree, the impact, and then I do think it's important not only to survey and talk to our teachers and administrators about it, but also our parents and even our students, to be quite honest. Like, I think those are all, as far as making a decision, those are the responses that I would want to have to make that
Well, that's the
decision.
first person I'm gonna ask.
And then I
Michael.
would also say
So,
too,
yeah.
I love when we get data with those. Like we talked
Yeah.
to 26 parents, we talked to 82 community. I love
Yeah.
that data because it really helps me to like pinpoint where that's coming from. So I love the data.
Thank you. One last thing I would say is we are facing a hard change.
Yep.
And so to couch that data and that perspective, we do need to ask really good hard questions and help all of our stakeholders understand
Yep.
the necessity of becoming more fiscally, not responsible. I think we've been responsible. Streamlined, efficient as we head into these next few
We're doing
pieces. So,
nothing different than every organization across America who's trying to become more efficient and spend less money and have less waste because everything costs more. So it is no different than anything that we're seeing. I just want to also throw out too that this also helps us to chunk up these efforts because this isn't the only effort that we will see.
Correct.
So we have a lot coming our way. This was just one thing from State of the Schools. So there's a lot of hard things that we will see, but I do feel like having that data and having these conversations will help bring the community along with us and help keep awareness at the forefront.
one last comment I'll make, one plug for Mr. LeBoux. Again, I was a principal and he was overseeing me and we were having these conversations. So again, I think that the time is ripe and we are ready to move forward with those conversations with our community. So I'm excited to see what we can end up with to help solve the challenge in front of us.
I'm going to plug it. That was the most positive presentation on closing or changing
When-
high
so
school
this,
schedule I've ever
this
seen.
schedule's been in place for 23 years.
Mhm.
So when did the conversation start about changing it? How long into that 23 years work did you go?
Well, when I was 15 years ago, we started having this conversation.
Okay, so it was 8 years in, if my math is correct. I can't remember.
And there's been different iterations of the
calculator.
law that we've experimented with over that.
Different circumstances come
So
up.
I've taught in all of those as well at the high school.
Okay.
And I've been administrator of different variations of this as well. So there's,
All right.
we have played with iterations throughout those 23 years.
Now it's time to make the move.
Go for it.
One way or another.
Yep. So I think that gives you guys a pretty clear understanding of what we want to see. Perfect. So trustees, if there's no other questions or plugs or violent hand waving,
Thank you. I want to say thank you.
perfect. So we will go ahead and dismiss Mr. LeBoux, and then I will go ahead and entertain a motion to move us into executive session.
I move that we go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061 B and D. B, to consider the evaluation, dismissal, or disciplining of, or to hear complaints or charges brought against a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent or public school student. D, to consider records that are exempt from disclosure as provided in Chapter 1, Title 74 Idaho Code.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Chair Taylor,
Aye.
Trustee Sue.
Aye.
Trustee Simpson.
Aye.
Trustee Baye.
Aye.
Trustee Kirkman.
All right.
Okay, we are in executive session. We will take a quick health break. Are we going to move these